Hi, I'm Doug Force with Memphis, Canada, and welcome to another Roundtable. Tonight's Roundtable is about community building, and we've got some wonderful guests that we'll have on the Roundtable tonight. Paul Colossus from Alberta. We've got Shawn coming in from Ontario. We've got Wayne Peters. He's handling all of Canada. And, of course, Jody Hemphill from Saskatchewan. We're just waiting for her to get to her camera and microphone. So we're going to start the roundtable with the four of us, and she will be joining us just shortly. Tonight, it's very important that we learn how to build our communities. With what's coming down the pipe, what the parasites that be want to bring as much chaos into our lives, and we need to nullify that by building community. It's the only way we win. Anyway, let's start this evening with Mr. Wayne Peters.
Hi, thanks for putting this together. You and I have been kind of touring around the countryside a little bit, talking about some of these kinds of things and reaching out on a one-on-one community level, which has been incredibly rewarding and so different from what we're used to doing in the digital space, getting out there and getting to hear the people, the things that are concerning them and what they're facing and what we're up against, and helping them understand some of the things that we can do something about and some of the things that we can't. So why are we abusing ourselves and our minds and our sanity on things that we cannot control, and how we can kind of get back to taking control of some of the things that we can do, and kind of recreating a little bit of that good old-fashioned community autonomy that is ultimately the globalists or the parasites' worst nightmare. And a lot of that has to do with understanding that this is top-down ideology, created in faraway foreign lands and kicked over to these young global leaders, and they take it to their nations and they pump it down the pipe. And at the end of the day, the bottom line of this all is it's really the intervention point is literally at the municipal level. And the sooner we restore our communities back to being community centric, community first rather than globalist first, the sooner this dystopia starts to fade away, and we take the fuel out of their gas tanks. And that's the ultimate intervention to what we're facing, and that's kind of what we've been doing. So this is good to see different regions of the country coming together and talking about exactly that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you, and you're absolutely correct. Now, the reason I wanted to have Paul on here tonight specifically was because he's actually writing a book on how to build your communities. And he's been working very diligently with people in communities in Saskatchewan and Alberta, and he's actually going to come on tour with me a little bit in British Columbia, speaking once again to communities there. So, Paul, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing and your book?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here. Obviously, people that have been a part of the conversation for quite some time probably don't need to get caught up too much. But, throughout 2020, I was already establishing communities here in the Edmonton area to make sure that people of like mind were equipped with resources that would allow them to conduct lawful civil disobedience. And we'll put it that way anyways, regarding the face diapers that were going on. And then, of course, in 2021, that shifted into businesses being closed down because they weren't, complying, like having a plexiglass in front of their till and so on and so forth. And so I was helping out, even in corresponding with health authorities for those businesses on behalf of them in many cases. Sometimes even standing in front of stores, saying that officers of the law can't go onto the property, making sure that people's businesses were protected, essentially. And then that translated into the fall, where we started working with people in the non-compliance with the employment mandates that were coming forward. That's when Doug and I really started to work together a lot. 15, 16-hour days we were putting in there. We wrote the paperwork that's on ethics over fear regarding the laws in Canada, and how all of those let us know that what they're doing is not just an experimental jab. It's far, far worse than that. And then, this year here has just been helping out the communities, recognizing that the direction that this land has gone, it is incredibly important that we learn how to be self-sufficient, because it's only going to be a matter of time before one of two things will happen. Number one, the government is going to not be able to uphold their fiduciary responsibilities, like the infrastructure for your roads, your law enforcement, your judicial systems, distribution sets. All of those things have to be done, managed, and taken care of, even self-governed by individual communities. And so the book that I'm writing is got two major parts. One is a mindset. I'm really, really big on helping people shift their mindset of one where there's centralized governance, and then one when there's self-governance. And once that mindset shift occurs, it's actually extremely easy to build a community of people who want to be self-responsible and self-governing. And so the book, the two parts, the first part is really focusing on the mindset to help people shift their consciousness away from one where we subscribe to the concept of having a parliament, or anybody for that matter, that has the lawful right to administer someone else's life. This is your life, so why grant anybody any authority over it? If we are in fact free people, then let's start behaving like it and not pass that governance up to someone else. A lot of people think, oh, that sounds anarchistic, and, violence is going to ensue, and some warlord is going to take over and then force everybody into their ideologies and so on. And I'm like, yeah, kind of like how we're having it now. Really? I'm sorry. No, I'm not saying that there aren't going to be rules. I'm not saying that, we're not going to have order, that the law isn't going to be observed. All I'm saying is that, as it should be, it is a hallmark of civility to have these unalienable rights be observed. And if they're not, then it's up to us to make sure that they are. And the only way we can make that happen is at the community level.
Well, and really what you're talking about is self-governance and personal responsibility, and taking an active role in your community's lives. Yeah.
It has to be that way, and folks, I know that it's hard work. I know, but I mean, every moment we spend on this planet, it has an ROI. Every single second that goes by has a return on its investment. So however you're investing this second right now is going to give you some return. So you might as well make sure that those minutes and those hours and those days that go by, you are investing in the right things. And the hardest work that you can do with the greatest return on its investment is shifting this away from the idea that someone else has authority over you, and one where we create whatever we want with whoever we want. And and what you're going to find, especially, you might be saying to yourself, well, my community, we can't really do the farming thing because we don't, the people in our community aren't farmers. Well, that's okay. Connect with some farmers, or find a community where farming is their strength, because guaranteed your community is going to have strengths that you can work with another community. So, this idea that we all have to do a certain thing in order for us to have, a working civilization is actually quite contrary to history. History has proven that, we thrive the best when we work within communities, when our families have support structures. And this concept of taking the elderly and isolating them into buildings is just absurd. Like, we didn't do that even 200 years ago. It's ridiculous. Let them be literally the central hub of your community, because they've got the most wisdom. They should be the ones teaching the next generation a lot of the principles that allowed them to provide for their kids such a wonderful environment.
Well, thank you for that, Paul. And now I want to move to Shawn. Now, Shawn actually works within a community. They're building up in the Bancroft area of Ontario, and they have their stumbling blocks, as I'm sure Shawn will let you all know. But you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you keep going. Right, Shawn?
Yeah, I guess you can say that. Before we actually get into that a bit, I want to touch on something there about in regards to what was mentioned about unalienable rights and self-governance. One thing I like to bring up to people all the time is, and first let me refresh everybody's memory about what it says in the de facto, Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights, where it states something along the lines of, the nation of Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Well, there's actually two words that are missing before the word principles, and it should be common law principles. And those principles are common law maxims. Now, I'm trying to stress this to a lot of people so that they understand their position. So let me just say to help everybody understand their position, the word, let me give you the definition of the word free. Simply put, it's the opposite of slave. The definition of the word freedom. It's the opposite of slavery. Okay, and there's a common law maxim that states, and this reaffirms those definitions. It states that this common law maxim that I'm thinking of, it states all men are free men or slaves. Okay, so you're either free or you're a slave. There's no in between here. Okay, so that's what we all got to realize, that are you free or are you a slave? There's no in between. So in thinking about that, we got to move on from that. Like, we got to figure out, do we want to be slaves or do we want to be free men? Okay, so anyways, I just wanted to point that out in regards to what you're talking about, unalienable rights. We have unalienable rights. What are those unalienable rights? The right to own land, the right to own property, to like a vehicle to move around in, a vehicle to move around in, to put a roof over your head on your own land. I mean, these are unalienable rights. Nobody can take those away from you. They're non-transferable. And this is where we're getting to today. Like, are these being taken away from us? Are they being transferred? Like, nobody knows this stuff.
Well, and just to further on the unalienable rights piece that you're talking about, the three most important unalienable rights, which Thomas Jefferson put into the Declaration of Independence, was life, which is your body and body autonomy; liberty, which is the freedom to move wherever you need to go; and the pursuit of happiness. Now, Thomas Jefferson had an argument with Benjamin Franklin about what he actually wanted to put there. Thomas Jefferson wanted to put man's labor, but Benjamin Franklin thought the pursuit of happiness would encapsulate man's labor within that. And I think Tom made a good decision with the pursuit of happiness, because but the number one unalienable right that you have beyond life and liberty is your labor, and it's yours and yours alone. And it's being a finite being, in other words, you're born and at some point you will die. No one here gets out alive. Everything that you accumulate during your lifetime is because of your own labor. And I'm a true believer when it comes to taxation, that no taxation should ever exist on man's labor. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. Go ahead, Shawn.
Okay, so yeah, no, so getting back to what's going on here in Bancroft and the group that we have, we've had I actually got involved with these people a year ago. They had rallies here in right in the downtown area, and it's a pretty small town. But I was actually surprised when I came up here and to see that there was actually a group here in such a small town. But I got involved. It was great. And I met a lot of people. Didn't know anybody up here, and now I know about 100 people. And it's been positive moving forward, and trying to just work with a few key people to actually bring more people together and start talking about now about community building and whatnot. And yeah, there has been ups and downs. I would like to see a lot more positive stuff, but it is coming. I see progress. How do we speed things up? I've been trying to emphasize the fact that we got another fellow that comes up every now and again, and he's, seems to be pretty knowledgeable about building communities. And the things that he says, it's actually gets people excited. And it's about basically helping each other. You want to build a community, we got to start thinking of each other, put each other first. And I was a big Western fan. Was mostly going back when I was a kid, and in those westerns you saw a lot of towns being built, and it was always the people coming together themselves and building those towns. And that's what we got to start thinking about doing, reinventing the wheel to a certain degree. We got property up here. There's a number of people that I've just connected with today, actually, and there's potentially more farms, more land and whatnot, and we just don't have the people to run them. So what we need to do, there's a lot of people that are awake in the city, and we need to actually bring them into the fold here and get them up here. But from what I can see, I actually know Christopher James, and I work with him, and I built a website for one of the farmers, and just to basically, Christopher has been advertising this farm every now and again, just quickly pumping it on his show a bit. And we've been set up an email address when I've been working with the farmers to help get some people involved and help to get them up there. The thing that I'm seeing that where it's a problem is that people are kind of like, they're waiting for the last minute until the shit hits the fan, which is a really big problem. Because
it's the Canadian way.
Yeah, I don't. So we gotta get some action happening now. Like, we got to get people up here and planting seed, and start, if they come up here at the end of when the shit hits the fan, there's not going to be enough food here because you weren't here to help grow it. So we got to figure some way around here, or emphasize some kind of way to move forward. And one thing I would suggest to people is another thing to think about, and this would be that a major change is coming. Absolutely, no matter what, it's coming. There's no doubt about it. Now, you got to ask yourself, do you want this change to happen on your terms, or do you want it to happen on the enemy's terms? Because if you wait until the shit hits the fan, then it's on their terms. So if people want to get a hold of me that are in Ontario, I guess we can put my email address out there, right?
Yeah, what I'm going to do in the show notes on YouTube, I will put all your contact information in for Paul, for yourself, for myself, and for Wayne. Wayne and I are really easy to get. Wayne's Wayne at ethicsoverfear.com. And I'm Douglas at ethicsoverfear.com. But I'll put them up in the show notes anyways. As we go on, so really what we're looking at for building a community is we're looking at how would someone structure that. And I sat in on Shawn's, when I was up in Bancroft area, I sat in on one of his community meetings. And they're not doing so bad. They're in their infancy stages, and they were setting up different committees to handle different bits of what needed to be done. But I'm sure that if I let Paul have the microphone here, he'll get into it a lot deeper.
Well, if I can interject here for just 1 second and kind of tie up some of the things that I'm hearing for the audience out there, one of the things that we have to realize, folks, is we're going to be participants or victims, but either way, we are going to be taking part in what is going on. So people that don't want to get involved, they don't want to stick their nose out, you're pretty much assigning yourself to the victim category. So anybody that doesn't believe that there's something that they can do, they're mistaken. There is something that they need to do. They just haven't found it yet. And it kind of all boils down to, and I'm also a big proponent of what Paul was saying about the mindset first, understanding that what we're really doing and what the war is that they're waging on us is the social contract, the average everyday behavior that we ordinarily assume that is the societal norm, the ethical, proper way of behaving in our society. That is really literally what self-governance means. So when people are talking about downsizing governments to it, that doesn't necessarily mean you yourself self-governance. It means going back to reestablishing the social contract that everybody knows and agrees and understands is the right way to build a community. And when it comes down to choices, these are the things that are going to help us to differentiate whether we get thrown back to the 1960s or to the Stone Age. So I just wanted to add that in there, that there's nothing to fear about getting involved and talking about some of these things. That's how we understand them and get better at them.
Yeah, awesome. And Shawn, I know what you mean, like the sense of urgency. People have to have that, and I'm anticipating that the book that I'm writing, I should have it done this week. I sent it away for a few people to proofread and even do some editing. But it is certainly written to provide some, we'll say, incentives to get started. So that's one thing. And then another comment that I see here, folks that want to break away or build community will need mentoring, and they need Cole's notes on common law, getting away from the corporation. MK Eastwood, I couldn't agree more. And that is going to be something that's touched within the book. But then as well, when I am working with communities, we're currently working with the Campsack community in Saskatchewan, another one in Red Deer, and another one here in Drayton Valley. They're all getting those principles. I'm going to call them principles more so than the common law, because if we can get people to grasp those principles, they'll be able to just put the common law together on their own, because really that's all it is built on principles. It's not built on legislation or what gets written or what needs to be said by some authority in order for it to be true. So that's that. Now, regarding structure. Yeah. So first of all, folks, you gotta have some people in your community that are wanting to do this. If you don't have anybody in your community, we've had encounters like that. They've had to actually move to go and find somebody that they can be in community with. So if you have to do that, you might have to do that because it's that important. With win or lose, if we want what we want, if we want that autonomy, we want that freedom, it doesn't matter whether or not we win or lose, you are going to have to find a community somewhere to do it. So find those first few people and just establish, okay, who's going to help push these things forward in the sense that they're in a leadership role that doesn't tell people what they have to do, but rather facilitate processes for those different committees to get their jobs done. Okay, you need a projector. Awesome. Who do we have in the community that's got a projector so that we can do our presentations? That is the most basic. I know I'm using a very basic example, but the reason I am is because it's something that people can grasp. We do this all the time, folks. Now we just got to bump it up and do it with larger scale things. Next thing that I really encourage people to do is, beyond, the first logistics, you got to get somebody going on a constitutional committee. That is paramount, because the moment that you have a consensus, that you have a direction, you've got a mission for your community, you're going to have to create something, some sort of a declaration. Let's call it for what that is. Declaration of how you choose to be governed. And that's more Doug's conversation, but
Well,
that's
no, but I was going to say even more basic than that, Paul. The communities come together and they would set up a volunteer list for different types of committees that would handle things like box gardening. I made a
right.
list. Canning, teaching how to can the vegetables and the fruits. What are root cellars and how do you create a root cellar? Water purification. What type of water purification? Electric generators. Who's going to what committee would take care of that? That kind of thing. Candles and other light sources. Biofuel, biodiesel, composting. Different types of committees that would handle doing that. I absolutely hate democracies. They always end in tyranny. Myself personally, I love a republic under the rule of law, which is the Constitution itself, and it binds the government to the rule of law and not to the whim of 51% against 49%. But hey, it's not up to me to create those constitutions. It's up to the people to do that. And if they want a direct democracy, then Lord have at it. You can see in Switzerland, it's kind of worked out, sort of, maybe a little bit now and again. but coming back to community building, I know that with Paul working, I went and spoke in some of northern Saskatchewan communities that Paul visited up there to help them get organized. And you tell them, Paul. Gosh, I don't need to tell your story. Unmute your microphone there.
Which part?
Well, when I went up to Kamsack and the surrounding communities, Norquay and Pelly and so forth, the people were getting were getting organized, and they had a lot of good things to say about you and Teo when you went up there to help them do that. And so, what are the basics? What is the basic stuff that communities need to do to get started?
Well, honestly, one of the first things that needs to happen is that people need to establish strong relationships with each other. And we started off we did 6 months of movie nights. And it wasn't because we figured that was going to, we were going to accomplish all kinds of things and, start a new country by doing so. But rather what that did was that it fostered the relationships for business. So now we've got people that have partnered up, that, skill set here and another skill set there, bringing them together. Over that period of time, they've gone ahead and started new businesses, and those businesses, one of them is a farm that is leasing land from someone that just too much, and they're going ahead and started their own permaculture farm, leasing that land. And by permaculture, it means that they don't even have to leave, they don't even have a tractor, and they've got a fully operational farm. I think it's 20 acres or something like that. And they're feeding, their target is to feed 300 people. So, and that was born out of us having those kinds of social events, right? So the foundation really is key. And that is the key foundation rather is really having those strong, bonded, galvanized relationships. And it doesn't have to be movie night. That's just what we did, during the lockdowns. And, but that's the number one thing. And so what I did when I was up in Saskatchewan was really getting people to form those friendships and those relationships, to start looking for opportunities where they could partner up. That's the first foundation. After that, then it's okay, what are priorities for our community? What are things that we know that we're going to need, and who can fill those roles? Especially as those conversations continue. Between the people that are, building friendship because they come over for, a hockey game or whatever else, however you guys want to do the socializing is totally up to you. But once those conversations generate, you're going to be attuned to what the community needs. And when you have those things coming down, write it down, get together with other people and say, here's what we need. Who's in our community that'd be willing to do this? And if you don't have someone, like was mentioned earlier, say, look, who in our community is an herbalist? I'm giving that example because Taya is a master herbalist. And because we need to know what kind of medicine is available to us in the back 40, in our backyard. We've got so much land here in Canada that is rich with nutrients. There's a lot of things we don't have to ever go to a pharmacy for. And we need someone in our community that can help teach this kind of this art, this subject matter. And so, and then, you know, you start asking around, and if you don't have anybody, email me, because Taya is more than happy to educate more people, because she can't do it all. There's no way. The whole idea behind this decentralization is that every community has their own source for medicine. And then the next thing that you want to, the next key component is find your strengths. Find your strengths and get those done fast as possible, because those are what you're going to be able to build the rest of your successes on. Especially like farming communities. Oh my God, you guys have it the best. Seriously, quit your complaining about the weather and get some stuff done. Okay, you have the best setup to have your community fully supplied with everything it needs, and so your strengths are going to be food. All right. But you may have a weakness in maybe setting up a judiciary. That's all right. There are communities out there that are already set up with their own constitutions as we speak. They are going to be more than happy to provide how they did it and what they did to other communities, especially communities that may be even in the same area, because you're going to find opportunities for those communities to work together. And you're going to want to have, you know, some sort of agreement between those communities. Your strength is judiciary. Our strength is food. Let's find a way that we can have trade agreements in just that, because that again opens opportunities for other channels to connect.
But there's also more than that, Paul. I mean, farmers need haircuts.
Yep.
They may not have somebody who can cut their hair on the farm, but a hair person could come out and do that. And it comes down to what I think is very interesting is barter trade.
Yep.
So, you know, they may not, they may create the grain or the seed to create biodiesel, but they don't have the infrastructure to do that, where another community has the infrastructure to create biodiesel. And so once again, they can go back and forth. And it becomes really important for the open lines of communication between all communities, not just in Manitoba, but in Saskatchewan and in Alberta. And there's really no borders here in Canada. I mean, we have these provinces and they have these, but I've driven across all the provinces and I never saw the lines on the map on the road. I mean, so we can work together. And that's the most important factor here. What is it that you have that is needed that other communities need and that other communities have that you need? And that opens lines of communication, and that's really, really, really important. There's also, you know, I mean, we have a decentralized network that has been working for several years. They call it the dark web, but that's just the internet. It's not really a dark web. It's just the internet. And on that internet, they have decentralized, what's it called? LokiNet is one, a new one that's just come out about 2 years now. It's been around, and it's a completely decentralized internet that you can get on and have websites on there and communication through LokiNet. There's all kinds of things available for people to get on there with their community. I talked to a gentleman when I was up in Kamsack by the name of Justin, and they were creating a barter website for Saskatchewan, which is wonderful because, you know, if you need a mechanic or a dentist or some sort of professional, somebody to cut your hair, that will do it for barter, for exchange of goods, you're also no longer playing in their sandbox when it comes to the currency. And there's no taxation in barter. The government would love to tax you in barter, but how can they if there's no dollar value? And so these are the things that communities need to start looking at doing with each other, is what can I bring to your community and what can you bring to my community, and how do we work together to make it work even bigger? Wayne, you've been very quiet. Why don't you say a word or two here?
Well, I'm just sitting here, you know, connecting some of the dots and what I'm hearing here, and so much of it is a lot of what we've been talking about. And I think one of the things people we can do a little bit differently, or maybe a little better, is over the last couple of years, we've gotten really pretty good at prepping for ourselves, preparing ourselves. A lot of those kinds of things, most of us have done a pretty decent job of that. But then to take it to the next level and understand that no individual survives without community, right? Our communities need to survive. And so how do we get to having those kinds of discussions? Paul was talking about movie nights, and when we're out doing presentations, I talk about neutral territory events, right? People think that the resistance, it means going and standing and holding a protest sign in front of a building surrounded by police, and that's not everybody's jam. That is not where we get to have meaningful conversations. Having neutral area activities is where we get a chance to have those conversations about what people do, what they have to offer, what they can bring to the table, and it allows us to from there establish a baseline. What does our community have an abundance of? What do they have a shortage of? What are their special needs of their community? And from there, that's where we can get to the point where so many individuals are there. They're at that point, is how do we connect these people to each other? And this is one of the things that I'm seeing this is happening everywhere so quickly that people aren't necessarily connecting to their next communities to fill in some of those gaps. And this is kind of the point we're at. I think within those groups that are starting to be prepared, and this allows us to take advantage of some of that mentorship and that experience that's out there in speeding this process up of this, community sustainability or autonomy. These are all things that are so important that aren't going and standing at that building with a protest sign. The real resistance happens in the community. The real intervention happens at a municipal level. Having these kinds of things in place, and this is where we have to get to where I think within our areas, wherever we are geographically, understanding that we have most of the resources on the planet. We have everything we need in this country. We do not need the government to provide us with anything. What we do need is we need to reestablish some of our manufacturing. We need to reestablish some of our supply chains and our good chains. This is happening naturally and organically, and not everybody is necessarily seeing it, but it's happening, and it's happening within all of the pillars of the institutions that we traditionally depended on: medicine, education, food, these kinds of things. It is happening, but it's a matter of us getting better at connecting and collaborating, with the right focus, I guess. We collaborate pretty well when it comes to protests and rallies, but when we start to take what we're doing, our actual process, and what is our community doing to be prepared, I run by the rule of fives. If it's not going to change anything in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, this is not a community project for us to do right now. We can do better. And addressing some of those things, starting with a baseline, realizing you've probably got a lot more at your disposal once you have started having those conversations. And like I say, when we're doing the presentations, you can go to a protest or a rally and you'll high five people and you'll feel great. And the next day you'll be like, what was that guy's name? What did he do? I don't remember. How do I find him? But you go and you spend a half a day at a community event getting your knuckles dirty and you're high-fiving. You're asking what's next? What are we doing next? And when you start to show that involvement, that investment back into your community, the community will follow along. That's real leadership. That is where the intervention takes place. That is where we take our country back.
Shawn, you've been sitting there quietly listening. Why don't you say a couple of things?
Actually, I was trying to butt in there a couple of times, but I didn't want to interrupt. But anyways, no, I wanted to touch base on one thing there in regards to skills and whatnot. There was one lady there, Maureen, at one of our groups there about a month ago. She actually brought a notebook in, one of those just, writing pads, and filled the notebook out at the top of the notebook, she wrote in, "What are your skills?" And then at halfway down the page, she wrote in, "What would you like to learn?" And there was about 20 people at the meeting. And she passed it around to everybody, and everybody filled it out. Now, the next week she came back, she read out all the skills. And it was like a really long list of skills, because people know more than one thing, right? So, I mean, it's an endless amount of skills that just a small group of people can, bring to the table, right? So just one of those things that, we can build on.
Yeah, when we alter what we think of as a value exchange system, the opportunities open up endlessly. They really do. And when we're not driven by monopoly money, when we're driven by our community assets and values, it's there again. There's no limits.
Yeah. I'm looking at the time here, ladies and gentlemen, and we're coming up with about 6 minutes to the hour. And we usually don't like to go beyond an hour. So tonight, I'm going to go around the table, and everybody's going to have a couple of minutes each as we come into the close of the roundtable. So why don't we start down in the bottom with to Shawn, up to Paul, and over to Wayne. Go ahead, Shawn. Take a couple of minutes.
Okay, well, I just wanted to address one of the things that I guess have been one of the problems, and that being with everybody being so busy. I would like to suggest to people who are thinking along the lines of building this community and getting involved, with everybody being so busy, you need to come to the point where you got to start dedicating some time. So, like, 1 week or 1 day out of a week, for people to come together. You got a group of people that 30, 40, 50 people. If everybody makes the commitment to just come spend one day out of that week, no matter what day it is, it may not be all the same for everybody that same day of the week, but work together and organize it so that, say there's 10 people available on Monday, 5 people on Tuesday, 5 people on Wednesday, whatever the case may be, and then have a plan of action. Okay, what are we going to do on that day? What are those 5 people going to do? What are those 10 people going to do? And just come up with a plan of action along those lines. And there was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember what it was.
That's okay. It'll come to you. Paul, I guess you're next.
Yeah, well, in closing, I know for myself, I'm noticing a huge shift. We talk about what needs to be done, and the problems that exist, and what there's great solutions are awesome. But I mean, on this call here, we've got plenty of examples of people that are making huge strides. And I think one of the things that really I've noticed help people shift their consciousness to take action is recognizing that what we accomplished in Ottawa in February was exactly what we're trying to convey to people needs to happen in local communities. People say, well, we're not free. What can we really do? All of these rules and regulations are out there, and the mandates and everything. What can we really do? And I say, just do the same thing that you did at the convoy. I had a lot of reservations about the convoy, but one thing is for certain, is that during that convoy, we cleaned up the streets, we shoveled the sidewalks, we fed the homeless, we built a soup kitchen, we brought food and fuel to the people who bring us food and fuel all day, every day. And here's the thing, we did that without asking permission from anyone. All we need to do is that same thing, what we did there, do the same thing at home. Clean up the streets, feed the homeless, build your soup kitchens, and make sure that those who are contributing to the well-being of your life, to the standard of living that you like to enjoy, compensate them, thank them, find ways to celebrate them. And you're going to find that your community galvanizes in ways that you never thought imaginable. But again, we saw glimmers of it We saw glimmers of it in Ottawa. That's all it takes.
Thank you, Paul, for that. That's wonderful. Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, I remember what that was. I was going to say. I was actually thinking about what Wayne said there about connecting with people that, it was at a protest or something, whatnot, and you missed that connection or something. But as far as building communities, you want to build bonds in those communities. I think it's important that, with the group of people that you built a community with, you should have a weekly event. I mean, just having a party at somebody's place, like somebody should host a party each time, like, even if not everybody can make it, but if you got 30, 40 people, and you got an event Saturday night, it's just bringing people closer together and building that community, building the bonds and building the relationships. I think it's important.
Well, that's what I was saying when I spoke in the cities. When I actually did speak at Dundas Square when I was in Toronto, and one of the things that I suggested to people is that they get together with their neighbors and have a kids' day in their backyard. So one family might have a trampoline and a swing set in the backyard, so they'll have the kids over for an afternoon. And it relieves the pressure off of it gives mom and dad an opportunity to not have to worry about where the kids are. And so 2 or 3 parents could be supervising, and there might be another neighbor that has a pool in the backyard, and they have a swim day, and 3 or 4 parents would supervise that. But it's all about building the communities, and a good way to start is with the children. Anyways, Wayne, you're sitting there patiently.
Yeah, I'm hearing these things, and this is the social contract. What Paul's talking about there, what happened in Ottawa, what we Canadians did. That is the Canadian social contract. Every nation has their own, how they treat and they interact and they live and survive within the people in their communities. And Paul is 100% correct in that. That's all we have to do to beat them, is to go back to the social contract that we know is correct and right. And when this all started coming apart 3 years ago, when I knew it was coming, I got in a lot of trouble for doing a stream one night talking about it and saying that what was going to get us through this was our humanity. That is what is consistent. That is what who we are obligated to. And they are trying to, the radical extreme left is trying to rewrite that social contract. So our responsibility is to the globalists, to the globalism, whatever flavor of the day they demand our penance for, whether it's this, that, or the other thing. They are sucking every bit of life out of us that we would ordinarily dedicate to our community, our family, our society, those things. And they are slowly but surely taking away our what they call rights to do that, and we are allowing them to. So this is what they're doing, is they are rewriting our social contract. When we just say no and we make our communities our priority, this is how it literally all goes away at the end of the day. And for folks that are out there thinking that you're alone in this, you are not, and the world is watching. And that is the biggest thing people need to understand, I think, is that the world is watching and waiting for Canada. We saw it in the convoy, what the world responded, how the world responded. What most Canadians don't understand is every time in the short history of our nation that Canada has stood up and said, no, we've had enough, we're going to do something about it, the rest of the world followed. That is a historic fact. And the rest of the world is waiting for us right now. And they're fighting hard. They're fighting hard. What they're waiting to see is for us to just take our lives back, because we just won't comply. And we have everything we need, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But if we don't, the sooner we say, no, we're done playing your globalist games, we want to play our community games, the shorter the suffering is going to be. So this is how we do it, folks.
Well, thank you for that, Wayne. And there we are, top of the hour. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for being here for the roundtable tonight. I hope you've taken a little something back to your communities from this. Like I say, I will put up all of the contact information for everybody on the roundtable tonight in the show notes up on YouTube. And so you can contact Paul directly, Shawn directly, Jody and Trevor directly, and Wayne directly. And me, well, that's super simple. The Myth is Canada at yahoo.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you're interested in learning about Crown Grants made patent, land patents, you can email me at themythiscanada at yahoo.com. We have a booklet available for a donation. And I can send you how to get that booklet, and or you can contact Trevor and Jody at Northwest Landowners Association directly, and learn how to take a local title to the land under your feet. But even more importantly, let's build these communities. Let's get this up and running. Let's take what's been ours since 1931 to seat a de jure government in this beautiful, beautiful landmass known as Canada. We need to do that. The international community has been waiting for 92 years for us to take what we should have done back 92 years ago. Anyways, that's it for us tonight. Thank you all very much for coming and doing this roundtable. It's been wonderful as usual. Take care, and I'll see you on the next roundtable, everybody.
All right. Have a good night.
We are 99%. There'll be blue skies when the chemtrails are all gone. There'll be blue skies when the chemtrails are all gone. There'll be blue skies when the chemtrails and they're in the pumpkins. Blue skies when the chemtrails are all gone. You can stick your coronavirus up your arm. You can stick your coronavirus up your arm. You can stick your coronavirus. You can put the virus. Stick your coronavirus up your arm. You can put it out 99%. Sing it way out 99%. Sing it way out 90. Together out 90. Way out 99%. You can stick your poison vaccines up your arm. You can stick your poison vaccines up your arm. You can stick your poison vaccine. Stick your poison vaccine. Stick your poison vaccine up your arm. Take it way out 99%. Take it way out 99%. Take it way out 90. Together out 90. Way out 99%. I'd rather be a human than a slave. I'd rather be a human than a slave. I'd rather be a human. Don't you know that you can rather be a human than a slave? We are 99%. Sing it way out 99%. Sing it way out 90. Together we are mighty. We are 99%. Up your arms. You can stick your new world order up your arms. You can stick your new world order.